Welcome to This Week in Family Law, the go-to podcast for busy Australian family lawyers who want to stay updated without the overwhelm. My name is Jenna Downey and I'm a family lawyer and the Managing Director of Leap Family Law. My co-host of this episode today is Dina Palethorpe. How are you, Dina?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming.
No, you're most welcome.
Did you have a good weekend?
I did. I had a lovely child-free lunch, so that was very nice.
How luxurious.
Yes. I think I was saying to you earlier, we got comped a few things at the lunch, and so lunch dragged on a bit. And sort of by the end of it, I was thinking, oh God, I've got to get home.
Just enjoy it while you can. Yeah. That's what I think.
How was your weekend?
It was good. I didn't do too much, which was nice, just catching up on a few things at home.
And I guess I was just thinking about this podcast that we're filming today.
Yes, which I'm very excited for.
Yes.
And what we'll do, we're going to mix it up a little bit this week and start with Law in Motion. And Dina has a really juicy topic that I'm really excited to discuss. And I'll hand it over to Dina to talk about that a little bit further.
I guess I was on Facebook because I'm of a certain age, that's where I get my news and social media from. And I came across a reel about marriage and divorce, and it got me thinking about the existential question of who benefits from both. I've canvassed some views from family, friends and colleagues, but Jenna, I'm really interested to hear what your sort of unfiltered view about that question is.
Yes. So I have thought about this quite a bit, and my thoughts are, in terms of who benefits from marriage, I would say that men, I was going to say women then, men benefit the most from marriage, as predominantly I still feel it is the norm in Australia for women to take on more of the mental load, do more of the housework, more of the childcare, whilst still working and earning an income and contributing financially towards the household. In terms of divorce, I would say women, although it would be women who can financially provide for themselves, and women, if they have kids, have support for the children, whether that's by the father or someone else. I asked my husband that same question, and he agreed that it would be men who would benefit the most from marriage and women who would benefit the most from divorce.
Well, how enlightened your husband is. That was not my husband's view. I think I got a very swift women. So I guess what piqued my interest in this topic was a reel. And so it was an excerpt from a podcast of the author of Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth Gilbert. And we'll put the link to that in the show notes for everyone watching. But I've taken an excerpt of her quote. So what she went on to say was, the worst thing a woman can do, statistically speaking, is to get married to a man. Married women do not live as long as single women. They do not earn as much money as single women. They are not as happy as single women. They are more likely to suffer from addiction than single women. They are more likely to commit suicide than single women. They are more likely to die of homicide than single women. They report themselves in every single way that you can measure sociological data for wellness as being less contented than single women. Conversely, married men, on the other hand, married to women, outperform single men by such a measure that it is perhaps the healthiest thing that a man can do is to get a woman to marry him. Married men live longer, they're healthier, they make more money, they advance more in their careers, they're less likely to commit suicide, they're less likely to die of homicide, they're less likely to die in a car accident. In every single possible way, the best thing a man can do is to get married to a woman. So I think the answers that I received from sort of my circle very much depended on the gender of who I was asking. I canvassed our office. It was a group of about 20. And so I wanted to get everyone's unfiltered view. So I said, how about we raise our hands, everyone, with what we think? Before we could do that, all the women in the room said, men, of course. And all the men looked too sheepish to say anything else. So I guess this comes from what perspective of a benefit you think marriage has. So I think a lot of the people that did say women benefit are thinking from a financial perspective. And this, in part, probably goes back to our archaic gender roles. You know, you've got the trad wife, you've got the husband that goes out to work and makes the money. And what we know about current society is that those gender roles don't fit so well anymore. You know, in practice, a lot of the times we have cases where both parties have to work. It's not really a choice. Both of them have to work. But what we're finding is that women are still doing the majority of the unpaid domestic work.
Yeah, that's right. And I know, obviously, Dina, you and I, as two married women, it is quite depressing to hear what the research has shown. And I mean, I can't help but agree with it, as I said at the beginning, that was my view as well. And we often talk about how overwhelmed that we both feel with work life, home life, and just trying to do the everyday juggle with trying to do it all, really. It is difficult. And I know a lot of women will relate to this, and it hopefully will change over time, but predominantly at the moment, I think that's the standard.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why we've both ended up at LEAP, which is a very flexible workplace. It's a great place to work. And so many people are moving into these law-adjacent roles. You know, you still want to keep your feet in it, but, you know, the time, the pressure, the stress of it all just means that you can't keep up with it. And like my personal experience is that, you know, when my son was born and he's now just turned 4, my husband was, you know, managing associate at one of the top tier commercial firms. You know, I was working full time as a senior associate in family law. You both just can't maintain those hours.
You have to make a decision. Who's going to give.
Something's got to give.
Yeah.
And I guess the interesting thing about the Elizabeth Gilbert quote is that she doesn't refer to any like sources or statistical data, which is where I come in. I felt a bit like I was back at uni studying for doing an essay. And I think I said to you earlier, like this itself could be a PhD topic.
Absolutely.
But I looked at some of the data and overall it is men that benefit from marriage. Surprise, surprise. So married men generally report better overall health and lower mortality from causes such as cardiovascular disease and cancer, whereas the presence of being married was of much less significance for women's health. Divorced and separated men are over twice as likely to commit suicide, which is a bit of a sad fact. And married men earn more than single men on average, and so this has been coined the marriage wage premium.
I find that point really interesting.
Just the fact of being married.
Yes.
Get invited to the golf course, you know, long lunches, all those things.
Yes.
Wife at home.
Yes. Whereas single men, perhaps they're a little bit less motivated.
Yeah.
In the workplace.
Do you think I don't think it's the research said it was just the fact of marriage.
Wow.
And it resulted in more career advancements for men.
Sure, yeah.
But similarly, when women don't have that benefit, if anything, I think employers, particularly in the legal profession, see women of a certain age and make a coin toss of, do I think she's likely to get pregnant? And take a period of leave. And these are sort of all the things that women are having to deal with. But I guess I should be careful with what I say because I don't want to ostracise half of our viewership in our 4th episode.
Not at all. I think if anything, it's such an interesting topic to discuss, and it can be quite controversial. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of people will resonate with what we're saying.
Have you heard of these fair play cards?
No, I haven't.
So effectively, what they are is it's a pack of cards, and you know, housework will be assigned as a task, or you know, washing or looking after children, or you know, daily drop off. And so you play it with your significant other, and you take the cards that you have ownership over. So I think most women will find that they're holding most of the cards. And the really interesting thing is I can delegate something to you, but are you going to take responsibility for that? When I come home, is the washing going to be out of the dryer or not?
That's right. And as you were saying before, men are contributing more to household tasks, but it's still probably off the back of perhaps their significant other saying, can you please do that task? And therefore women are still carrying the mental load around it. So it helps, but at the same time it's not fully unburdening the woman from that particular task, because they have to notice it needs to be done and they have to actually ask their partner to do it.
In canvassing views about the question of who marriage benefits, one of my husband's friends said, oh, well, if all Dina's female friends are saying men benefit, it sounds like they need new husbands. He's of the enlightened few, I guess.
It's interesting though. Like it's so, it's a different perspective.
Going back to the data that we were just talking about, there was some data to come out of the States. It's called the Pew Research, but it does show that married women spend more time on unpaid housework and childcare, have less leisure time and free time, and are more likely to carry the invisible load. So this is not just our conjecture. There is data behind it. And it went on to say that whereas married men spend comparatively less time on those things, and whilst they have increased their housework contributions, it's not to parity with women. And I guess in thinking about this topic, I was thinking of, some female partners at law firms that I know who do this juggle very well. But I think it's very hard. You have to put those boundaries up. You have to sort of be firm with them. And not many women do it well.
Yeah. Yep. It's still the overwhelm would creep in at times, wouldn't it? And even though on the outside it might look like things are going smoothly, it could be still very difficult for those women who are juggling.
Yeah. And I guess, we're family lawyers. So in thinking about this topic, I started thinking about, well, who does divorce benefit? And I mean, my personal unfiltered view before I sort of started looking into it would be, take out the presence of children. I would say single women would bounce back the best, back to pre-relationship status, I guess. And this would be women generally tend to have better support systems. They're more likely to call on those support systems when they need it. And also, I guess, financial security would be a big part of that. And, single childless women are probably not dealing with some of the economic disadvantages that married, women with children are dealing with, that economic disadvantage. It's, having years out of the workforce, depressed superannuation income, fewer career advancement opportunities, having to have flexible work arrangements. For me, for example, I work 2 days a week and that's what works for our family. But I could not maintain that in a legal role.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my household, when I came back to work after maternity leave, I did work 3 days, but now I work 4 days. And for me to go to 4 days, my husband actually also dropped to 4 days. So
enlightened.
Yeah, yes. Which works for us.
Yeah.
And every situation is going to be so different.
So I looked at some of the data at this question as well. And so it did confirm a lot of my views. The presence of children was was decisive because that also led to the question of financial security. Women tended to do better emotionally after separation, and it's because of all those things I said. They can draw on social supports a bit better. They also had better outcomes when they had perceived control around the separation. So, they felt like they were, I guess, an active participant rather than sort of just something being imposed on them. And I think that has a really great a direction for us as practitioners of, well, do we need to be listening to women more when we're advising them through the negotiations and settlement? And bear in mind those long-term outcomes, because the outcomes we're negotiating now can really affect them 10 to 20 years later. And we know that women are the most, older separated women with children are the most financially disadvantaged.
Thank you, Dina, so much for sharing your views, but then also the research behind that as
Yes.
well. I know that this would be quite a controversial topic for our listeners, and they might have some particular views on it as well. We'd be very keen to hear those views, and please write to us. You can reach us at familylawpodcast@leap.com.au. You can also reach us on our socials. We have TikTok and Instagram, so you can message us on there. Let's get into this week's updates. What's up, Dina?
Well, so the court has introduced a new high-intensity sitting period, and so it's effectively a rolling list. Matters are listed, I think, in March and June, and so all the matters in March should have already been listed a start date. All the matters in June, I believe, will be listed starting dates in sort of March. So that's something to watch out for. I remember it being a baby practitioner and having one of my first matters in the rolling list. It was a very interesting experience.
And is that to get through the
Yes, yeah. I was talking
backlog of
to
matters?
Fiona Kirkman, and she says the court loves doing it because they can sort of pressure parties into settlement. But you do wonder if people are reaching good outcomes or they're sort of just being forced into them on the day. I'm very excited. We've got 2 new cases. So we've got our first case that has interpreted the new legislative provisions regarding companion animals. So that is the case of Wright and Berger, and we will put the link in the show notes for everyone listening. It's a judgment of Forbes J. So essentially what the new provisions say is that the court can make 3 types of orders when it comes to companion animals. So the first is granting ownership, and that's in inverted commas, of the animal to one of the parties, an order granting ownership to a third party, or an order that the animal be sold. What the legislation doesn't do is provide orders for the shared care of the animal. So in this matter, really interesting, everything else had been settled, parenting matters, financial matters. The only sticking point was the family dog. And so Dad conceded that Mum would have ownership of the pet, but he effectively sought spend time with orders for the dog so that the dog followed the child, the spend time provisions.
It's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm glad that a case has come out to address this issue, because I feel like that there probably would have been a bit of a question around it, and something that clients often do want to talk about and they want to get advice on. Yeah.
But you do wonder if the purpose behind the legislation was, if this is in line with that, it's, more litigation over, I guess, is this an issue that should be litigated, taking up time in our courts?
Yeah, it's a very good point.
So before the amendments, there was a 2022 case called Grunzeth and Whiten that dealt with this. And the judge in that case said that the court would not undertake a parenting case in relation to an animal. What Forbes J said in this case is that given the legislative changes, the court is now required to do that. And that's under Section 90 SM subsection 7 of the Act. And so the court has to look at things like the circumstances of the acquisition of the dog, who during the relationship had the care of the dog. And in this case, Forbes awarded custody to the mother and said that the court doesn't have the power to make a spend time with order in relation to a dog. So I think this will be the end of, litigation about this issue. You would think it's sort of shut the door on that.
Yeah.
There's also been a case which has made passing reference to the case of Shinahara. It's an interim decision of Chanel J. It's called Mihova and Mihova number 3, and we'll put the link in the case note, in the show note. It dealt with a few different issues, but the important thing for present discussion is that the wife sought litigation funding for her paid legal fees. And Shinahara, as we know, was all about adbacks and, dealing with saying that we have to deal with present property, not not things that are no longer form part of the balance sheet. In this case, Chanel said that legal fees can be taken into account under Section 79, subsection 4 as historical contributions, and Section 79, subsection 5 under current and future circumstances, including wastage and other justice requirements. But interestingly, Chanel went on to say that there was nothing stopping the court from taking this into account as a dollar figure rather than a percentage. And I guess my thinking was that that had sort of been shut down by the court. But this is sort of opening the door to, I guess it's really reverse engineering the calculations of saying, okay, this money's, we need to add this back. It can come back on as a dollar for dollar figure. So it will be really interesting to see how that is interpreted by future cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it was never going to be an easy time post Shinahara in terms of how practitioners then deal with add backs or what would constitute an add back. But it's no surprise that something has come out.
Opened the door
like
to
this.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think in talking to some Melbourne practitioners, I think it's very judge dependent, but I had put forward the idea of reverse engineering the calculations, and I'd been told, no, the judges don't let you do that. So this is, I guess, maybe authority that you can.
Yeah, watch this space.
I guess the most important update from me is that this Friday we have our first ever annual conference.
It's so exciting,
yeah,
isn't it?
I'm very excited about it. And I guess, in my opinion, I think that we have brought together some of the leading voices in family law talking about some of the most important issues in family law at the moment.
You've done such an incredible job organising this conference and the speakers at the conference. So for those listeners who are attending, you have Dina to thank for the incredible lineup, and we're all really looking forward to it.
And we look forward to seeing you all there.
Thank you, Dina. And that's what's up for this week. Continuing on the theme of mixing it up this week, we're now going to do Case Note Corner, and I'll hand it over to Dina.
Well, I'm very excited that this is our first edition of Case Note Corner. And so I have picked an oldie but a goodie. It's the case of Re Andrew, the 1995 case. And so the reason I've picked this case is because during our family law conference, we're doing a session of sort of parenting in transition, and it's sort of picking up the jurisprudence following Re Andrew. So I thought it'd be really interesting to do a bit more of a deep dive into that initial case for our podcast. So this was a parenting matter. Mum was the established primary carer. Dad was seeking some spend time with orders and seeking unsupervised time. Mum, on the other hand, was seeking supervised time. She said that the father posed an unacceptable risk of harm to the child. The critical feature of this case was that the mother had a strong and genuine, but most importantly, immovable belief that the child would be unsafe in the father's care. The court didn't necessarily make a finding that the father did pose an unacceptable risk in the traditional sense. However, evidence was led and ultimately accepted that the mother's anxiety and distress about the unsupervised time proceeding was so profound and to such an extent that it would have a detrimental impact on her parenting capacity. So really interesting case. I don't think you see many of these being run. The guiding principle at the time was the child's best interest, but that looked somewhat different. So it was under Section 68F of the Act then. And so that was under the section as it was then. Some of the considerations were the wishes of the child, if they were old enough, the nature of the child's relationship with each parent and others, the likely effect of changes in the child's circumstances, the practical difficulty and expense of contact, the capacity of each parent to provide for the child's needs, the child's maturity, sex, lifestyle and background, the need to protect the child from harm, any family violence and any other relevant considerations. So it sort of looks similar to what the legislation now says, but not quite the same. It was pre the twin pillar considerations. So I guess I remember learning those in uni and being like, what's this? The court in that case reasoned that the child's welfare is not assessed in isolation from their living environment. A child's well-being is closely tied to the psychological functioning of their primary carer, and if ordering unsupervised contact would significantly destabilise the primary carer, and that destabilisation would materially affect the child, then the court must weigh that impact as part of the best interest analysis.
I remember reading a case and actually doing a video for our social media on a more recent case which took into account the Re-Andrew principle. And the facts of that case from memory were there were two children. The eldest of those children was with dad and they had a car accident, and I believe that child did pass away. So in terms of the remaining child, they were disputing the time with that child, and the mum argued the Re-Andrews principle on the basis that she feared for the safety of that child, and she had a genuine fear for that child given what had happened with the oldest child.
Yeah, these cases are so interesting, and I guess they really turn on the evidence that you lead, the forensic evidence, and that really goes to the mother's genuineness. And I guess you wonder how often would someone make that up? It feels a bit extreme to make it up. And the court in this case did say, we shouldn't be using this simply as a veto to try to get, no time or supervised time. But, that's the risk with this case. But I think, judges are astute to that and they're looking for that.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see how, with the recent 2024 amendments, how these cases will be interpreted differently, given that there's more of a shift in a focus to safety now rather than best interests. And I guess that includes the safety of the primary carer as well.
And I know, looking at it from a different perspective, I was exposed to relocation cases where you would have mum or dad say that I want to move with the child. This means so much to me that if the child cannot come with me, I am still going to make that move as well. And it's really putting it out there to say, this is a situation, and you'd obviously need some good evidence to back up what you're suggesting. And as you're saying, the court would look for any gaps in that. But it is taking a very hard stance on what your position is.
And sometimes these cases, they ultimately end in, if the court says, no, I don't accept mum's bona fides, we have to order a moratorium of time. And one case, ordered 6 months, another one ordered 12 months. On the flip side, in another case, I think one of the recent cases, mum's fear was viewed as being genuine, and to let her stabilise herself and the child, the court said, no contact with dad for a period of 12 months. So these cases are very much case by case.
Thank you, Dina, for that case note. We've loved being in your ears this week. If you would like to send us a question, please email us at familylawpodcast@leap.com.au. Otherwise, you can reach us on social media, including YouTube, TikTok and Instagram, and message us there. We also invite you to rate and review us. It really does help this podcast get in front of more people. We look forward to next week's episode. New episode drops every Monday.